Oh, academic agent did a video today. He watched what I said about him and he had something to say. He came along and said, could we make George Formby popular again? But not by doing it from bottom up, but with top down instead. Oh, top down, a top-down culture, top down. Oh, a top-down culture, top down, a top-down culture. It's the way things happen, don't you know? Oh, top-down culture, top down, a top-down culture. Academic agent, academic agent, academic agent, and his top-down culture. This academic agent is a ukulele, and I own one. In fact, I own 4. And the reason I own 4 is because the very thing you have wondered is actually happened, but it's happened in a slightly different way to what you think. At some point in the last 10 to 15 years, there has been a push in the educational system, and especially at primary level, to introduce the ukulele. Now, the reason is because this is small. You can put it in your bag. It's cheap, you could afford it very easy, and with these little fingers fit on, and this is a really easy way of getting into music. So actually all over the country there are ukulele groups, and what they are doing is they are playing modern songs by Adele or whatever it is, but with the ukulele. And when I was teaching music, there was a lot of songwriters that would come in and they no longer played the acoustic guitar. Their thinking system was that. Now, the actual music of George Formby, which I absolutely love, and as soon as academic agent mentioned him, I felt, well, this does need to happen anyway. It should be happening, and our top-down cultural forces should be pushing George Formby onto the people. But I thought that'd be a funny way to start anyway. I appreciate academic agent actually watching my video, and I appreciate him doing a reply video. I have no real disagreement with him. So this video is going to be more of me actually trying to add what I can from my position of an English gentleman of a certain age that's worked in the industry, that has a hobby interest in these academic ideas and these cultural philosophies, of which he is the expert. But him being the expert in that area, I think he's lacking a little bit of the actual knowledge of the music industry to fill in those gaps. I think us as a team together could be very interesting. I'm not going to push back against anything he says. First off, I want to apologise for raising the question of whether his motivation for this was racist. And I'm going to give academic agent some background. All this video is going to be about background for academic agent, because I think I've got something to say which will illuminate his point more, but will also find the nuance in between our two positions, which I think is the profound thing. I think we're both searching for that. It's the electric rub between these two and where they are, because of course he admits that everything starts, on a cultural level, but then the industry grabs it, or the culture grabs it, or even worse, the politics grab it. And I know this is the case. I was smiling at some of the stuff he was saying, and I really want to add to it. But that join of going from organic culture to the people, what should we call them? The powers that be deciding that that's going to be pushed on us culturally, that there is a join here, and that's the magical join. Does it last years or does it last seconds? And what's actually going on in that? And once that has changed from one to the other, can this inform this at all? Or can this actually be undone by this? There's a whole bunch of questions I find that are really interesting with this. So first I want to apologise for the addition that I added. If you watch the video, I added a little extra thing. And so I don't know whether this bloke's right wing and whether it's coming from a sort of a racist position and going, well, we've got high art, which is like classical music, blah, 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 Shakespeare. And then you've got this sort of, Afro-American music, which is it's not as sophisticated, blah, blah, blah. And when I came across academic agent's video, which was sent to me by one of my viewers. I watched it just from a music history point of view, and I thought the Doug Morris thing was really great. I thought that he'd uncovered a whole bunch of research, which I didn't have to do. I could just watch the video and then go, well, yeah, that's interesting. And I agreed with him that this was a real push by the music industry to move the music industry from being based around bands, which is more expensive, more chaotic, and had more personalities that could scupper the thing, to a production line process. Hip hop was very organic and wasn't like that. It started off as 2 turntables, an MC in a party, you know, going back to back on a James Brown beat, whilst they started to spout truth, basically. Completely chaotic, you know, rooted in groups like the Last Poets, which was a jazz poetry group in the 1960s. And we can all see that around about the 1990s, after a tussle, the record companies just grabbed hip hop, and it became, especially when they started to marry it up with this thing called R&B, which wasn't even a thing till the 90s, but R&B. So you got Mary J. Blige, she's up to it with, I don't know, 50 Cent, or it was that one that I mean, anyway. Let me not go off because I don't want to ramble either. So I agree with all that, and that was my part of the video. I didn't agree with what he said about jazz, but now he has clarified it. I think we're singing from the same hymn sheet, and I find him very interesting. Now, I want to say I had no idea of who he was. I had no idea this elite theory, top-down theory. Obviously, since then, I've been really exploring it, and I find it very interesting. I think the academic agent is my kind of guy. I like the fact that there's 2 English gentlemen. I mean, he when he did his reply video, he's got this like black cape on. I assume that's the outfit of the academic, which I liked very much. He's got a beard. He's sat in front of a lot of books. And I found that all very enjoyable. 2 English gentlemen talking about rap. I thought that's exactly what the world needs. And so, but I agree with him. I agree with him entirely. So I apologise for getting that completely wrong. And I'm going to tell Academic Agent the story here. When I started discussing the history of jazz, I tried to push back against the established narrative of jazz history, which is jazz is black music created by black people in America. When I looked at the history, that didn't ring true. And one of the things that really persuaded me that this was not the case was the case of Homer Plessy. Now, in Academic Agent's Answer Back video, he mentioned Rosa Parks, and I agree entirely that Rosa Parks, when I was a kid, I thought was a middle-aged lady, and she got loads of shopping, and she got on her bus like this, and she wanted to sit down, so she sat down, and then she got arrested because she was black. But actually, she was a young woman who was politically active. Homer Plessy was the same thing. This was a black gentleman that decided that he should be able to sit in the whites-only carriage, and he went and sat in it, and he got arrested, and the court case played out. And it's like the inverse of the Rosa Parks thing, because actually he lost the case, and the apartheid that was Jim Crow was then enacted. But what I found very interesting about that story is that Homer Plessy, the black guy that sat in the white carriage, was only 1/8 black. All right, so when you looked at a photograph of him, he didn't look black, right? My mum's Indian. My mum's half Indian. I'm a quarter Indian, so I'm more mixed race than Homer Plessy was, the black guy that sat on the thing that enacted because they lost the court case, Jim Crow. So suddenly I thought, when in the 1890s or 1900s we were trying to describe black people, they're talking about something else, and we consider Creoles to be black people, but the Creoles didn't. They were actually in a different category socially, and that was shifting around. And the very notion of black is constructed from the top down, always. The very notion of race is constructed from the top down. As I've explored Academic Agent's theories, this is where it gets really interesting, that I agree with him. And the narrative of history and how we approach that, this is all top down. It's all the establishment controlling the narrative, right? That's what it is. It's not just about people with money putting money into things to get it successful, just blindly. It's not blind capitalism. The point is here is if things are being controlled from top down, beyond the money, there'll be a reason why they want to change it like that. And so the story of jazz gets changed. All right. I did a series of videos where I explored this, and I had a huge amount of pushback, academic agent, you wouldn't believe. And many people were saying that I was a racist. And at some points, I got like threats and all sorts of nasty stuff happening. And so here I am as a YouTuber, very interested in what you're going to say, but having to put a caveat in, not because of you, but because you were unknown to me at that point. So I thought, if this bloke is on the right, blah, 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 and that's his shtick because he's on YouTube, you could do that on YouTube, is actually your shtick. But if you've got a music channel, I might be, they might go, see, Andy did all that racist stuff with the jazz history, and now he's siding with this other guy that doesn't, you know. And obviously you are not that. I didn't know that at the time, so I did a caveat to cover my back. Now, why did I cover my back? Because we are operating on YouTube within this system that we could say or not say certain things, right? So the idea that this is not top down is absolutely preposterous. YouTube is top down, absolutely top down. And it's not just top down because of the sort of economics of it, that you have to have a title that works in a certain way, that you have to deliver the material in a certain way, that you have to have a thumbnail. All that, the capitalist aspects, I don't have a problem with. It's what goes beyond the capitalist aspects and the way there is a party line that we have to follow. Now, he pointed out something really interesting. When I brought up my work with Punch Records in the early 2000s, which was which used public money, taxpayers' money, to explore urban music in the West Midlands and wider. So I'm going to fill academic agent in because I totally agree with him. Right, I have a politics channel. It's a lot less well known. The link should be down, but I've got a politics channel. This has really driven my approach and why I'm here talking about jazz and blues and all this music I talk about, because I became very aware of my work in education as a teacher. I was a music lecturer for 30 years, up to degree level, but I was never an academic type. And when I started, I got offered jobs in universities. When I started as a teacher, got offered jobs in universities because back then they valued the practical experience, the chaos of bringing in somebody whose knowledge wasn't in the academic world but was in the practical world. And the last few years, as the education system just got more and more corrupt, and I didn't know where to go, and I applied for jobs in university, but without a master's degree or PhD, there was no, it wouldn't happen. But 20 years ago, I was getting offered jobs because they were looking at my CV and saying, oh my God, look, we need this guy in, this will be great, he knows all this stuff. This is how society has been changing, and this is being pushed top down. I think if academic agent actually wants to make contact, then he can get my email. I hope he does. I'd love to have a chat with him online, but also offline, because I think we could both be very useful for each other, and he may become aware of some of the stuff I've done academically. I mean, I've interviewed many a PhD on here, some heavy hitters. We've gone right down into the depths of this. I agree with him entirely. I think it's the nuance that's interesting. It's very easy to come up off like some postmodernist cultural constructivist to say everything is cultural, everything's coming from the top down, and there's this supremacy that's controlling thing. I don't think academic agent's coming from that angle whatsoever. And I don't think he's the libertarian right-wing type that thinks it's all about the individual either. Right? I think he is interested in culture and the things that operate within culture that create culture. And there is a more romanticized view, which of course I'm going to side with, and I'm proud to side with the artist's view, is that it's us, that it's the artistic tussle that is going on. And within that, there's a very small esoteric aspect of that tussle, which actually informs culture and informs the top-downness, right? The top-down doesn't come from out. The top-down is informed by artists, musicians, writers that put ideas out. These ideas sort of machinate. And I think there is something to be said about the journey of an idea from being a novelty to atrophying into dogma as well. And the atrophying into dogma could well be driving the top-down thinking. And so I believe at the moment there's been, in the Western liberal democracies, an epochal shift. We are going from one epoch to the other, and that's very painful. And so some of the atrophied ideologies that are have been, over the last 20 or 30 years, have replaced the old ideologies. So the top-downness has changed. They are crumbling, and we are trying to construct a new idea, which is why Academic Agent's popular and why he's having this success online and why YouTube works, because we and him, both of us are here talking completely, hopefully, our own ideas. There's no top down here, but there is, isn't there? That's my point. There is a top downness. He'll be aware of it, and I'm aware of it. There's certain things you can say and certain things you can't say. You have to step carefully. And when I do that, I get shown up. And so when he said, about the race, I felt embarrassed. Luckily, he's a decent English gentleman and he wasn't offended by it, because I think he understood why I was saying that I was covering my back. So let's go back to Punch Records. Many, many years ago, I was teaching in a college. Some guys who owned a local record shop that specialised in hip-hop and dance music, house music, white label stuff, they came into the college to do a lecture on DJing to the kids. This was not top down. This was a guy going to the college and the college coming. It was very, very small. And I'd worked in community arts. So I went up to these two guys and said, well, you could do this properly. We could get some arts council funding for this. And I came up with the idea of going into schools and actually making hip hop records, which is something I was very interested in. That was my idea. This wasn't top down. The guy that set up Punch Records, a guy called Amo Talwar, was the guy that came in from the little record shop. That was not that was all organic. And we started working on stuff. And once we created this model, and it wasn't just me, there was a whole bunch of rappers. Punch Records started off as being organic. And what happened was the funding bodies, once there's a group of people involved in it, that justifies their money, because they have to justify it. So they go, well, there's those people in Birmingham, and they've been doing all this funny rap stuff down there. And it's like they got 20 kids down. I mean, maybe we could shuffle some money in. Now, the top-downness at that time was, of course, these kids were black, they were urban kids, and so there was a top-down ideology that they should be helped based upon their race and their background and all that type of thing. To fast forward, Amo, the guy who set up Punch Records, and you can check this out, Amo Talwar, has now got an OBE, and he works for UK Music, and he sat down with the Prime Minister, and he's working alongside a guy called Tom Watson. Now, Tom Watson used to be the leader of the Labour Party, and Tom Watson was also in the year above me at school. And this is very, very strange to me. I cannot work out how this all comes together. I just don't understand it. There just seems to be things at work. Very hard to describe. And I've spotted this within the industry all the way through. So yes, he's right. By the time we got to the fact that we were pulling in like £250,000 to do these workshops, 100 kids working across the whole of the West Midlands in working alongside the BBC, they had decided. So why do they decide? Well, I would say it's the ideology of identity that made them decide that. There is a video in here when I look at the sort of gentrification of jazz in the 1980s, where I go into the funding structures that happened and how there was a strong argument in the Reagan administration to stop funding avant-garde art and start funding historic art, especially that which championed Afro-American art, blah, blah, blah. And so funding was suddenly set aside for jazz. And without a doubt, the top-down aspects of jazz in the 1980s is fascinating. And to do this, and this was written into law, this was written into the law of the funding, right? And this is why Wynton Marsalis now sits there pulling $2 or $3 million a year to run jazz at the Lincoln Center. And the idea that changed at that point was jazz was a black music form, that it went back to Africa, and that it is the American classical music. That's a top-down idea. And people walking around this will go, yeah, well, jazz is a black music, is it? Now, many jazz musicians didn't say it was. So this idea of blackness in jazz. I think blues is classified as a black music. I'm not just doing this because I don't think any music should be described by a race, but I don't. I actually morally have an ethical belief that you shouldn't be describing any art form as black unless you're going to, describe all the other art forms. So there's a massively contentious area in all of this. When you start to look at jazz, that has to be considered. The fact that these people are outsiders, the fact that the original capitalist companies were only interested in exploiting these people, and the fact that the exploitation gave no artistic worth, which created a space for many years for people like Louis Armstrong to be able to change the actual structure of recording. The reason why we've got a recording industry, because Louis Armstrong was a jazz musician. He could improvise in the studio. Everyone else has got a written form. It's very interesting that you have answered me with us talking to camera. It's a different thing, isn't it? Talking to camera is a different thing. I've got used to doing this, right? You have to go hell-bent for leather. You don't know what you're about to say. This is what Louis Armstrong was. And when this new form came along, he was able to bend what he did. He could lengthen tracks or shorten tracks to fit the duration of a side of a 78. He could take instruments out, add instruments in. He could create drama. He could put voiceovers in, sound effects. All this thing Louis Armstrong did. And that was the stuff that created the music industry. And that went on for years. The dust didn't really settle, I don't think, till 1985 with Live Aid. I think we went from, in terms of the recorded music industry, people tried to get it back. They tried over and over, but every time they tried to get it back, some genius came out and knocked it off again. And there's a whole history of it seesawing. Since around about the year 2000, it has been completely static, and the companies now own it completely. And I believe that's rooted in Live Aid. I think Live Aid was the point when rock and pop musicians became self-important, and in their self-importance they were undone by the top-down ideology that was coming out of our culture at that time. It's more than just big business, it's more than that, and I agree with academic agents. That's the bit I'm interested in. Of course, in the music industry things come along and then the labels get a hold of them and then they push them and it becomes a big success. And of course, now I want to tell you a couple of stories here to fill in. Some of this I think will be useful for academic agents going, yeah, that I can see how that actually works. He mentioned Jay-Z. I've got a friend, I might mention who it is, who was in a band, and one of the guys in that band actually was asked to go out to do a writing session for Beyonce. So he spends a couple of lovely days writing songs with Beyonce. They get a couple of songs done. And at that point, Jay-Z walks in and he walks up to the guy and he says, have you been getting on? Have you written some great songs? I said, all right, I'll give you the deal here. Whatever you've written today, we're keeping 95% of it. So you've got a decision to make. Keep 5% of you can have 5% of Beyonce or 100% and nothing. It's up to you. That is the actual deal. When you say Jay-Z's in there and he's trying to get this royalty by writing the things, it's so much more vicious than that in the music industry. And so with hip hop and program music that's been made by machines, so you got David Guetta, programming something for some singer and it's been sampled, right? Once you have that, it's not the Beatles. You're not going to have Lennon McCartney, or maybe Lennon McCartney and Harrison, or maybe Lennon McCartney and Harrison and Ringo, and maybe George Martin. You could add him, maybe, but it can't go any further because it's a band. But if you look at the writers on any modern popular song, there's about 12 of them. None of them write it. They are just people who own the company and they have just put their name on the writing. These are the things, the machinations that have caused it. Now, one of the things that I found very interesting in my time in the industry was being close to the whole X Factor phenomenon. And being close to popular music, because I was making dance music in the early 2000s. So that was when I had my eye on dance music. Now, downloadings were happening and all that type of thing. Napster was happening and people make big overtures about that, killing the music industry. But there was something else that happened. I know people in that whole X Factor phenomenon. And what happened with the music industry is the top-down way that you push stuff, if you had the budgets, was to get onto television. So you were a band, your little band, you sign, the record labels got you, right? But there's no way you can access television. if you could get on television, it was a done deal. And we had Top of the Pops, and Top of the Pops would, if you could scrape enough local sales to get into the bottom of the top 40, you might be lucky enough to get a slot on Top of the Pops, and that could guarantee a number one. And so the television was really important. What happened with X Factor is Simon Cowell and the rest of them suddenly realised that rather than trying to use television to break the artists, how about making the process of that they do, the process of finding the artists, why not make that the television show? So now the television show isn't owned by somebody else and you put your artist on it. What happens now is that the television show is about the company. It's about the top down. You've opened the top down out and you're showing everybody how it works, right? Now, what's really interesting is suddenly this attained a level that here in the UK, the most important cultural program in the 2000s was sorry, I've had a message that's put me off. That's the trouble with making these impromptu videos, and I've just side read it while I'm trying to talk, and it's a serious one. I'm gonna go and deal with that. These things happen, so I'll have to get this one done. I only want to do 30 minutes. I don't want to go longer than academic age because it seems cheeky to do that. Anyway, let's get this story done. So the music industry suddenly look and they go, my God, these guys are now, they own Saturday night television. People are paying £1 million to get an advert in, and it's the music industry writ large where there's no labels there. How can we utilise this? And so at some point in the 2000s, the record company looked and they got a single coming out that week. One was by Alexandra Burke, who was the product of one of these talent shows. And the other one was by Robbie Williams. And so these are going to be released on the same day. So what they did is this top-down machination came up with the idea of saying that there was some sort of competition between Robbie Williams and Alexandra Burke, that they're in competition. Can you imagine it? You know, Robbie Williams is there and he goes, right, I'm not having this. Alexandra Burke releasing a single at the same time as me. I challenge you to do a duel. Get her on the phone now. Miss Burke, I'm disgusted at this. I'm going to war with you. Let's see who gets to number one. I think on Sunday we should go back to back, do 10 paces forward, turn around, and then fire and see who has got the number one slot. And whoever it is the top dog, right? This was invented as an idea and it ran through the newspapers all the way through the week. Who's going to be number one? Alexandra Burke. I mean, you might remember this story. You'll remember the story more than the songs. And then this was going to culminate, with Alexandra Burke and Robbie Williams on X Factor. One will perform their tune, one will perform their tune. The newspapers were all watching it. It's actually heightened up. The ads have even got more because not only have you got the X Factor contestants, you've got Alexandra Burke and you've got Robbie Williams, and they're fighting each other. And then the next day on Sunday, we can tune into the radio and find out who went to number one. Now, who went to number one does not matter. It does not matter in this story. The fact is, the next day, one of them had gone to number one. The record industry had thrown everything, every bit of top down they'd thrown in the UK at that point. And that's how top down works, right? They looked at the sales and they were abysmal. And at that point, a shockwave went through the industry. And the top downers, the people who, you know, run the labels, the people who make the music, the people who do all the machinations around that make somebody popular, that you have to sell your soul to, basically. This is the devil's bargain. That is what, it's that story. The Star is Born story is what X Factor pushes. The Cinderella theory is the machination used to establish new artists. And they'd thrown everything at it and it no longer works. No one was buying the singles anymore for a whole variety of reasons. And at that point, the industry changed. The people decided. They decided. And the industry thought, and what you had is producers that, right, let's stop doing popular music. We've got to go and work on CSI Miami now. Let's just do some music for that. We've got to get into, you know, soundtracks. There's no money in this anymore. And the actual talents at that point within popular music just went. And it's quite obvious, you know, if you watch a film and you listen to the music on a film or a computer game, that musical talent's phenomenal. You listen to the average pop song now and it's working at the level of a 5-year-old. And the reason is because it's only aimed at 5-year-olds now. And so I think there's a tussle going on. I hadn't explained that tussle on the previous video. So I think the tussle is the fact that the top-downness can be affected continually and influenced continually by the genius of artists. But also our culture shifts. And when the culture shifts, the top-down model has to shift. And it has to shift drastically. And sometimes it can be within minutes, not slow processes. Or, I think it was literally minutes. I had a phone call at the time from a music producer, and I said, "What's happening?" He went, "Oh, you won't believe it." And he told me that story as it was happening. And the industry, the top-down agents, see, the thing is, for the top-down to work, you have to have agents. And these aren't the artists, these are the intermediaries. This is what's really interesting in the music industry, is the intermediaries. So obviously that is the art, but it's not the art, it's the entertainment. Well, it's not the entertainment, actually, to be more precise, it's the media. And so what's very interesting to me, philosophically, is that myself and Academic Agent have an audience here. He has twice the audience as me because he's got over twice the subscribers. But we both got an audience, and we are affected by top-down, but there's a certain thing here. We know that we're in a realm that we didn't expect to be, because he was going to be working in a university and I was going to be working in the music industry, but we both find ourselves here. I would be very interested to see what the academics agents' actual ideas about the top-downness of education. To go back to my original point, these are in the schools because there's a top-down idea of getting this in. I have got to the end of the video. I've got to the end of the video. I've said everything I want to say. It was quite good. I was a bit rambly, but I think I got away. It was so nice to play my ukulele. Ukulele, like Academic Agent and Andy Edwards is done. It was very interesting and it was a lot of fun. You should check out George for me, because he's an interesting man. Do you know he was born deaf? And then he had a sneezing fit and suddenly he could hear. That's my George Formby fact for today. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Academic Agent. Get in touch. I would love to have a chat with you. I know I'm only a lowly 54,000 subscriber and you're on over 100,000 subscribers. You've got that silver plaque. I want one of those, but I don't care. I'm here because probably, you talking about me, it's top down, isn't it? You're top down to me. When I saw the fact that you were doing a reply video, I thought, oh, extra fans. Now, something that I must say, loads of the fans of my channel are your fans, right? And everyone was saying, oh God, I can't believe Andy Edwards is academic. So this is not an argument. There is something in what I'm doing, you're doing, which resonates. That is what I've felt, and I didn't realise when I stumbled upon you. So, done. If you like this video, put a like on it. If you want to subscribe. If you want to know what I've just been talking about, there will be a link down below to this new reply video, and you can take it from there. You can use Google and find out where things are, can't you? I got a PayPal tip jar, stick some money in there, especially you Academic Agent fans that have come over to see my reply to your guy, and hopefully it's all lovely and nice. We're all getting on. It's nice when it's like that. That's all I want in life, is for everyone to get on and be happy. That's all we're after.